Welcome back, guys. My name's Alex. That's Eileen. And you guys are watching Straight to the Chicane Podcast. And today we were talking about Abu Dhabi, the last race. It's over.
It's over. 2023, that's a wrap.
All of the shit cars are in the bin, as they say.
Yep.
And the only car worthy of saving, the Red Bull, has hopefully gone up to the shrine that it deserves to be on.
Yes.
A lot happened in a short week. We came right from Vegas. They got on a plane.
Traveled across the world.
And they got to Abu Dhabi, and it was a pretty good race. There was a lot of things up for stake.
There was a lot on the line.
There was.
For the race.
And it came down to trying to strategy call with
Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
He's got to do it all.
I think we kind of got a lot to talk about. I feel like there was some news leading into the week, even though it was such a short week. Something about...
There's always drama.
Something about, I guess, Lewis might be going to Red Bull?
No, something about Lewis inquiring about wanting the second seat at Red Bull.
But it wasn't him acquiring.
Who said what and who called who?
Right.
Being in the question.
Okay.
So, coming into the weekend, we had Christian Horner talking to Daily Mail.
Okay.
Which, not always the most reliable source. And basically said earlier this year, Lewis's camp had reached out, no real specifics, but inquiring about the second seat at Red Bull. And that was pretty much it. There wasn't much to it other than that. And so that, of course, sparked the day before, Media Day. So going into Media Day, It's like, so Lewis, what's your side of the story? Were you interested in going to Red Bull? Max, would you like to be teammates with Lewis? So, who said what turned into a little bit of a bigger story. So that transpired. Lewis denies ever reaching out, essentially stating that he was like, I found my old phone and was like, hey, let me check. I'm looking for some old pictures of, something, and realizes he has a million missed calls or text messages. And he's saying Christian had reached out to him. And he's like, oh, shit, I'm sorry. Missed your message. You're having a great season. Hope that I can, be competing with you soon.
I guess it could go both ways, right? So then what did...
Then Christian fired back.
Yeah.
So
what did Christian say?
It was like, who said what and who's right and who's wrong? So then it turned into Christian saying, well, no, listen, Lewis hasn't won in almost 2 years? Like, obviously his contract's up. You would think that he'd be looking for any potential open seats. Then it turned into his dad, Anthony Hamilton, reaching out to have a conversation about what was happening with Checo's seat. Now, is it that he was just reaching out because there was so much speculation in the media? Is Checo going to be there next year or not? Or was he really interested in going to Red Bull?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they can go both ways. I think there is a little bit... Well, for one, I don't think Lewis would want to leave Mercedes. The engine that he's been driving his whole entire career, before he was even a professional driver, he's been driving a Mercedes engine. So I don't think there's any need for that. I think it's more the latter of the thing where maybe Anthony Hamilton's reaching out, seeing what's happening because he wants the gossip because he is kind of an insider, you know what I mean, in that world.
Yeah, and Christian and he was like, we've known each other for 15 years. We've got a good relationship. So I would think that it was just more so a conversation about, hey, what's happening next year?
Right.
Let's chat, let's talk, whatever. I didn't know they were that close, but obviously that came up this weekend too.
And then what do you expect? I think media to take and grab on whatever they can grab onto right now, especially there's not a whole lot going on. You know what I mean? Like everything's kind of been decided. There's no real driver drama. The only thing that's happening is we don't know what's happening with Logan Sargent. Isn't that's the only seat up for grabs?
Right, but I think going into the weekend, obviously the big piece was Mercedes versus Ferrari, what's going to happen. So
right, because that was 4 points?
It was 4 points going into the weekend. I think that anything that's, Lewis Hamilton and Red Bull is willing to, of course, start World War III, in the media.
Yeah, they
Lots
do.
of clicks. Lots of generated revenue.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the media trying to make that clickbait, trying to give them something to click onto. And I feel like people kind of beat that to death. And I feel like even we beat it to death talking about it for a few minutes. I don't know about you.
I I don't think so, but it was a huge topic of conversation.
It was, and was it even worthy of?
I agree that Lewis not only isn't going to go to Red Bull just because of a Mercedes engine, but he's not going to go and be number 2.
No.
And that's that on that.
Yeah.
On God.
Oh, okay.
So we're done.
All right. Is that all the gossip? I think that was all the week that they had, and that's enough gossip for the whole week.
That was enough. I
Yeah.
mean, they're really, obviously was just leading into it, still talking about the Ferrari controversy. We did have, coming off of Vegas, we had the conversation of Ferrari, saying that the FIA should pay for the damage because the track wasn't, suitable. And that was a huge cost that was obviously coming to Ferrari. Oh my God, to Ferrari for Carlos's car. That got denied. And then the other piece, which
Of course it did.
kind of funny, Toto and Fred were very outspoken in Vegas, which the drivers' conference, obviously after the damage to Carlos's car, a lot of F-bombs came out, a lot of swear words.
Oh, yeah, they got sentenced to the principal's office, essentially.
They got taken to the principal's office, they got slapped on the hand with a ruler, and they got a dunce cap and a walk of shame.
Yeah, I think most of them were laughing it off as they walked away.
They definitely were.
Yeah. I can't see that being anything other than that, a verbal warning, whatever you want to call it.
A strong formal warning.
Yeah, a strong one. What we did see, though, kind of coming into it, is that I think McLaren was the only team to bring a new livery for the weekend, a last race look, because most teams were, I've heard people that I talked to throughout the year, and they're like, oh, I love how the teams bring different liveries all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen quite a bit.
I mean, if you're McLaren, you're bringing one probably every other race.
Every other
season.
race, yeah.
23 races this year, and they had won probably 20 races. I'm just joking, but
Yeah.
pretty much
Quite a bit.
They had a new one this weekend, but AlphaTauri had the same one from last weekend that they launched.
Yeah, they just carried it over.
The zebra or Cincinnati Bengals kind of style livery.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, there wasn't a whole lot. And really?
Yeah, there was one more news thing.
Okay.
They announced the name of AlphaTauri's.
Allegedly.
Okay, so allegedly going around the internet is Racing Bulls with a photo then next to with a singular bull next to it.
Yeah. So it's been trademarked.
Yes.
So I think that does speak a little bit. But it is interesting when you break down Red Bull with 2 bulls and Racing Bulls with 1 bull, singular and plural. Kind of confusing, but also I don't really like it.
Yeah, that's a really basic.
I mean, Racing Bulls.
There's nothing impressive about that name.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yep.
Let's go back to the drawing board with that if it's not locked in yet.
Yeah, I'd rather see AlphaTauri with the clothing fashion brand.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
But
all right, so that was I kind of remembered that last minute. So that's the last thing I think about the gossip leading into the weekend. So we are in the last race. Typically,
it's boring.
Let's just typically whoever gets pole wins the race. Typically,
yes,
that's been the case for the last few years. I think there was maybe one time that didn't happen.
I mean, I'm not sure that's
I don't know.
I'm not
either.
Crofty. I don't have it written on the wall. So
so I think the cool thing is that going into practice on Friday that they had 10 rookies. Mm-hmm. We got to see a bunch of people. So we even got to see an F2 driver that hasn't even been, an F3 driver that hasn't even been in an F2 car yet go right into a Formula One seat. So there was some pretty.
And we saw the F2 champion.
We saw the F2 champion go from F2 practice.
And the Mercedes F2 driver that was, could have potentially challenged him this weekend for the title, but Porsche held on to it.
Yeah, he did. And look, they did all a pretty good job. I think there was no incidents with them. It was a pretty flawless practice for all the drivers. I've been kind of curious and kind of watching Behrman a little bit. Did I say that right?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember if I say it right or not. He's a rookie in F2, and he's just
Haas, right?
Haas. He ran with the Haas car. I'd like to see him kind of come up, and I think he has a really good potential and a good shot. But yeah, that was a big thing for practice 1. Then practice 2, we kind of had Carlos spin out.
Yeah, so a lot of people missed a lot of course, with 10 rookies, missed practice 1. So running time was really limited this weekend. Then we had practice 2.
Yep.
Carlos was 10, 20 minutes in.
Not very long.
Not very long into the session. And then it was 20 minutes, 25 minutes of a red flag to repair the barrier.
They only had 20 minutes of running in total, for sure. And it was 40 minutes
because Hulkenberg caused another red flag once they finally got going. Yeah. So practice 2 was pretty much a wash.
It was. They got very little running.
Practice 3, so we got a lot of quali sim, not a whole lot of race pay, or really the teams didn't have a clear understanding, I think, going into the race today. Mm-hmm. But yeah, practice 3 was interesting. George was on top. Neither Red Bull was in the top 3. We had a McLaren and a Ferrari. So,
And I mean, how much is that just Max now just not showing, knowing what we know now after the race is over?
Well, Max did say that he wasn't happy with the car. The setup wasn't right. They ran a ton of stuff behind the scenes to figure out what was going on. And of course they got it right.
I mean, they seem to get it right all the time. They're dialing it in. They finished
17 seconds ahead.
Thank you. 17. I was going to say 16, but you're right.
17 seconds ahead. They haven't been developing their car since summer break. So
how is that possible?
We should be scared for 2024.
They just, unleashed a lot of power. No real engine issues.
No, the reliability was great this
Over
year.
1,000 laps led.
Oh my God. Are we going to get into the Max Verstappen?
I mean, it's just, I'm sorry. It's just.
Records broken this year?
This year was nuts.
I mean, honestly, down to end of race donuts were perfect. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You talk about a perfect season. I mean, he clinched 19 wins today. And so the team officially got 21 out of 22 because we, of course, didn't have Imola this year. Only one race was a non-Red Bull win for the whole year. And I'm not, I keep thinking back to when we were on our first episode of this season. And post Bahrain, George Russell had said in an interview,
he did,
Red Bull can win every single race this year. And I was like, there is no way.
I didn't believe it either.
I was like, he's just talking smack. He's feeling some type of way. There's no way. And then as the season progressed, I kept holding out hope that something was going to happen.
But it didn't.
And I think everyone thinks, I think about best races. We all thought Singapore was so great because it was nice to see the mix up without Red Bull. But they dominated everywhere they went. I think Singapore was just literally an anomaly.
Maybe. It was just, they got it wrong. Yeah, we should rewatch it actually and see what happened.
And honestly, Singapore is one of the only tracks that Max hasn't won at. And because he had that issue last year, remember, in qualifying, and he qualified low because they didn't put enough fuel in his car. And so the team screwed him then. And so I'm like, if it wouldn't have been for Singapore, which that was it. I mean, it was a clear slam dunk the whole season.
Yeah, and I think they're going to strive for that next year. However, I think
Chris,
doing that again said it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, that's what Max said. But Christian post-race today was like, listen, we won 21 out of 22, so there's still room for improvement.
And I guess there is.
Room for improvement?
I think the other teams really got to do a lot of catching up.
Max broke so many records. Red Bull broke so many records this year. It was a year unlike anything anyone has ever seen.
Yeah.
I think, everyone can agree on that. Max won 85%, almost 86% of the races this year. So he broke that record. He broke Seb's record of 10 race wins in a row.
He passed Seb, too, in most wins.
He passed Seb. He's at 54.
Yeah.
So he's officially the third most wins driver in F1 history.
I mean, and he's 25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. He led 1,000 laps. Crazy. He had double the points.
He was the only car to finish every race.
Only car to finish every race. There's been 2 other drivers that have done it. What else did he do? Oh my God, I'm missing stuff. But so many, I think he tied a couple different records. Then there was, oh my God, why am I blanking right now? He's won every race in North America since 2019.
Yep.
He won all 3 in the United States this year, which no surprise. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, he just pure domination. I don't know what else you can say about it. I mean, you've listed for a few minutes here all the things he's done in 1 year, so it's incredible.
I'm getting hot.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about the race a little bit because there was really good. There was some overtaking. There was some qualifying. I guess we can talk a little bit about qualifying because there was some shockers. The fact that Ferrari, which was in such a title hunt, Carlos didn't even make it out of Q3.
Mm-hmm. Q1.
Q1. And Lewis didn't even make it out of Q2.
Mm-hmm.
So big shockers.
Yep.
And
we had some track limits.
Logan
didn't set a time.
And honestly, Logan had two really good runs. And he was like in the fourth spot, and I think he probably would have fell down, but I think he would have been able to get through to at least Q2.
Oh, he definitely would have been
for sure.
Q2.
But yeah, you're right. He didn't set a time again for 2 weekends in a row now.
No, he set a time in Vegas because he knocked Lewis out in Q3.
Okay, but then the weekend, the race before, he didn't qualify.
I don't know if it was 2 weekends ago, but it's been
because I know he needed to go to the stewards again and ask for permission.
Yeah, I don't think it was in the last 5 races. In the last 5 races, Logan has been doing better, but yes, he had a tough weekend. The car did look good from a qualifying pace perspective. Albon was up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a shakeup. Ferrari wasn't looking great during qualifying.
No.
Even in free practice 3, Charles was like, it didn't feel that great. And even his first lap in Q3, he was a second off Max, and then somehow puts it on the front row. Pulled it out of out of the bag.
He's like, I don't even know how I did it because even last weekend I said I've had the best lap ever, and even then this weekend it's like the best lap.
Well, and he said that about his first lap in Q3. He was like, I don't know what happened. That felt like a great lap, but they're a second down, and then he goes out and just nails it.
Because he put the new tires on that time.
Yeah, it's just
that was the difference between used and the new and the brand new set.
And then McLaren looked quick in qualifying, so I kind of thought, I'm going to gamble, it's going to be a potential McLaren, pole or front row or whatever. And Lando was on a great lap on his final lap, and he just lost it in the turn.
Yep.
And he's just been struggling on Saturdays with qualifying.
I think he's just trying to push it a touch too much right now.
I think so too,
and that car is really on edge. It's a good car when they have it right. I mean, look, Oscar Piastri still qualified, P3, so... Mm-hmm. The car's still there, but the moment you're off, and I even saw Lewis and how he didn't qualify. That car was on edge too, and like some of the cars that are really right, are really trying to come up and be close to how easy Red Bull has it. They're like to get it into the window of it being right. It's either it's right and you're looking like George Russell and Oscar Piastri, or you're wrong. And
I don't think Lando was a car setup issue.
I don't know.
It was not.
We know Lewis was a car setup. Or
Lewis, and here's the thing is Lewis and George, let's talk about both of them. But first, let's start with McLaren.
Yeah.
Lando was quick. The car looked good. It was a driver mistake.
Well, he made a mistake.
Yeah. It wasn't the fact that the car wasn't set up. He still qualified P5.
Right.
With that huge snap.
Yeah.
Where he could have easily lost it. He pulled it together and he held it on the track and finished the lap. So that was impressive because it could have been bad. But the car was quick. Today, I think not as quick as they wanted it to be. But Lando still did a great job. I think Oscar too. But Mercedes, both the drivers said post-quali, even Lewis, the cars are set up exactly the same. And George was like, listen, every weekend it's the same. Either he's ahead and I feel like shit, or he feels like shit and I feel good.
Yeah.
Last 2 weekends, Lewis has qualified P11. This is his worst back-to-back qualifying out of not getting into Q3 since 2010.
Wow.
I know. And he's feeling a little sad.
Oh, yeah. He's ready to go home and take a little break. He's probably going to go skiing or do something and get his mind away from here for a minute. Clear it up.
I know.
They all do, actually.
My heart hurts for Lewis. I mean, it really does.
They all need a break. I feel like that's a long season. 22 races out of 23 they were able to finish.
Yeah, but they went to Imola, too. So I'm at the end of the day, I don't know how they did it coming from Vegas to go to Abu Dhabi. I can't even believe that. But, yeah, I think... interesting qualifying if we want to stay on that topic. Max on pole. We saw Christian win a bet against Helmut Marko.
Yeah.
Helmut was betting against Max being on the front row. Like, he literally was like, okay, we're not. That's crazy to me, first of all. And Max already said.
How much did they bet? Did they say?
500 euros.
Okay. So for us, that's like pennies.
I'm like, well, not for us. 500 euros is not pennies.
No.
We're not rich.
To them, oh, you're right. To them, it's like pennies.
Okay, sure, yes, but
Yeah, my bad.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know, but apparently we hit the jackpot. I don't know.
We didn't.
Yeah, so they bet against. Well, Christian didn't bet against Max, but Helmut learned his lesson, and so Max on pole for what, the 12th time this year. So he had the most poles. He did take the giant wheel home. Well, he said, I don't know how I'm going to get this home, but he took a regular sized tire, which was pole man of the year.
He's going to need a bigger room for all the trophies he got this year.
Yeah, I know. Impressive too. He did a like TikTok or something for Red Bull where they showed him like just a corner of the trophy and he had to guess where he won it. And he got every single one right. I mean, for how many wins he had, pretty impressive. Yeah. So.
So the race kind of started typical. Fairly clean.
It was clean.
Yeah.
No safety cars, no VSCs, no red flags, no retirements.
That's right.
We did have a retirement technically, but no one knew it happened.
This is the Carlos?
Yeah, I think they just boxed him and kept him in because he was out of the points and they were waiting forever for the safety car.
Yeah. Okay.
So they were like, well, he goes
technically, I would have said all 20 cars finished, no real incidents at the first lap. First turn was fairly clean. Lewis went a little wide to stay away, and other than that, the damage and hitting of other people didn't kind of happen until a little bit later. Mm-hmm. You know, it was pretty clean. The passing didn't really pick up until even what we saw. It was just kind of. Well, I should say this, that at first Leclerc was trying to make a couple lunges and he was holding up there. Because before DRS, the first lap, he was trying to get in there and then Max was just able to kind of start to run away.
He was going for it when the opportunity was there. And he was like, you know what? But he also had to keep in mind he needed to be clean because he was in the best position to score the most points for the team.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was a 4-point battle for Mercedes and Ferrari, and we've got the two drivers out of position in the back. George is P4.
Yeah.
You know, so honestly, a lot of luck swung Mercedes' way today in order for them to secure the constructors. And I think the momentum was definitely with Ferrari. And I want to talk a little bit about Charles Leclerc for a second.
Go ahead.
In the last 5 races, he's qualified on the front row every single race.
Yep.
And I think when I think about qualifying for the season, I of course you think about Max, but I feel like Charles has had a pretty consistent and pretty dominant qualifying season.
1 lap, very quick.
Yeah, 1 lap pace, but over the last 5 races, I mean, I think about the U.S., I think about him being on pole in Brazil, not being able to start. I think about, Qatar. I think about all the races that he did really
Monaco.
good.
Yeah,
not even, but just the last 5 races in general. Yeah. Vegas, look at how great he did in Vegas. And he had a good race today. I think pace-wise, they were definitely a lot slower. I was like, look up, and I'm like, how is Max 10 seconds ahead already? But I think Charles definitely, he was getting back in his groove. We said post, summer break, Carlos was kind of on it.
Yeah.
Won the race, had, back-to-back pole positions. And then something kind of clicked on Charles' end. And, I mean, he ended up finishing ahead of Carlos.
He did.
So.
There was a couple of good toss-ups, too.
Yeah, so pretty crazy. But it was good to see a couple, tries there at the beginning.
It was. Then it kind of fell into suit, and it kind of played it down to the pit stops. And it was really the undercut that kind of took advantage of a lot of people. I know that I think it was Alonso pitted kind of early and within 2 laps was ahead of really the kind of people that he was battling, which was like Lewis and Ocon, because Lewis had a bunch of battling between Alpine. He kept passing. He had to pass those guys for a while.
Lewis, that's where the first accident came from, was Pierre locked up into the turn and Lewis rear-ended him. And basically this end plate of his, front wing was damaged.
And then something on the back end of
Pierre's was causing, some issues for him too. Yep. Nothing you could really fix during the race. So, that obviously I feel like was a little race ruining for Lewis.
Yeah.
But the biggest pit stop strategy piece was Norris and Russell. So Norris was P3. He was, right ahead of Russell there. And essentially it was, Piastri started P3. Norris quickly overtook him. And then it was the double McLarens. George ended up finally getting past Piastri, which that was a couple laps in the making.
It did take a minute. Yep.
And then the first round of pit stops, they came in at the same time. So Lando came in, George came in, and McLaren, unsurprisingly, totally not normal, had a Mercedes-style pit stop.
Yeah.
And it was like...
And then it held him up so that it allowed...
Held him up, George got ahead, and then he had track position. So that was interesting. And then really, Leclerc stayed out, Max pit first, so we saw Leclerc lead the Grand Prix. And then we saw Yuki lead after Leclerc came in.
The first Japanese driver to lead in...
I think it's like 30 years or something. Yeah. And, he didn't even know the stat. But he had a great weekend, great qualifying. Yuki, AlphaTauri brought another upgrade this weekend, last race of the season.
Still bringing upgrades.
But hey, it shows them moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think for them, comeback, they were battling for P7 in the Constructors. A huge comeback for them, And so... Great qualifying, great race, got to lead the race, but I think strategy-wise, Max and his engineer were just kind of figuring out when should we pit based on how many laps he needs to lead to get the 1,000 lap sled. Yeah. And he even said it post-race. That's why on the second round, he said, you guys can prioritize Checo over me.
So does he care about those stats, or does he not care about
He said, first and foremost, he cared about winning the race.
Yep.
Second, he cared about getting 1,000 lap sled.
Okay. That's something no one's done.
No one's ever done it.
Yeah. Crazy.
I mean, we also have
we haven't had this many races in years.
We've never had this many races.
Right.
We've never had this many sprint races.
Yeah.
So, obviously, even the point system, in comparison, first of all,
yeah, we were looking.
Nobody's ever done it like Max has done it this year. We're not discrediting that, but when you look at other categories, I was looking back at Michael's days and early Mercedes days, and they were winning with 200 points. Mm-hmm. That was the winning constructor. That was, even, I want to say, who was it? I think it was Michael one year, won with 96 points. Yeah. So the system was just a lot different back in the day.
It was a lot less people getting points, and there was fewer points being given out.
You wouldn't get 25 points for a race when you would get 7.
Yeah, or 8.
So in comparison, and Max is always very open to say that. I feel like he's always listen.
Well, I think mostly even Lewis and a lot of
you can't compare our greatness in this generation to people in the past because it's just not the same.
It's not even close.
Yeah, but interesting. So, what else? The other big moment, I guess, of the race was, and this is the controversial moment, I guess, of the weekend.
We should, because it was the 5-second penalty, and it was really the reason for the end of the race.
Right. So, we saw Checo was, on the charge.
On a really, really good charge, coming from kind of midfield and just blasting by everybody. I think you heard a couple of drivers at the end of the day that were he just came out of nowhere.
That was George.
Yeah. What's going on? So, yeah, he was on a charge, kind of took an inside line. Or, I'm sorry, he took the outside.
It had been a couple laps coming. Yeah. Him trying to overtake Lando.
Yeah.
And, they ended up going into a turn. I feel like we've seen this a million times. He came in on the inside.
And he fucking overshot the apex.
And he thought he was ahead. And
he was not.
He thought the car next to him was going to disappear or break or do something.
Because you hear the driver say, oh, he turned into me. Well, the road turns, and they have to go that way, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So Perez was off the apex, missed it completely because he had full lock and was just
I think
past it. He was coming in hot.
He broke late.
Yeah.
And then it either slid or messed up or something, but he went too deep.
Yep.
Lando was ahead.
He was, and had full right to take the turn as he was.
But some will say that Checo is ahead. And by definition, your front wheel being ahead of the rear wheel axle or whatever, because my God, I feel like there's been so many incidents over the years where it's had to be discussed and talked about and this and that and whatever. But anyways, Checo and Norris come together and Norris goes off the track. Feel like, at the end of the day, they both are like, he turned into me. He just turned in and hit me. And it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other.
Oh, yeah.
And so, a couple laps go by and no damage. So that was good. No punctures.
No, the wheel to wheel.
It's just a bump.
Which is good. That's the best kind of one that you want to see is just like, and they can keep it moving,
Yeah, and then it came on and it was Checo's getting a 5-second penalty. So, and it was, we were like 10, maybe 12, I don't know, a couple laps shy of 15 laps left. So it was, towards the end of the race.
It was.
And everyone knows about it. And so at this point, we've got Charles P2 getting hunted down by Perez. We've got, George P3.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, what's going to happen? Carlos is on a one-stop strategy on the same tires. So we're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And we're still waiting.
He was still, I can't believe they just were hoping that a safety car, that's what they were planning on to get his strategy.
They literally said that to him. He was like, what is our plan?
Yeah, a terrible plan. That was a bad call on their part.
They were waiting for like a Latifi moment.
Yeah.
In 2021.
I wasn't for that plan at all. I think that plan is just
what I heard,
an awful gamble. You're not a winning that gamble.
You're not, but I mean, I get it. They started on the hards, so it was like, what are we gonna do? And then everybody had 2 sets of hards going into the race today, so it was like, I mean, we saw most of them use either start on mediums, do hard, or hard, medium, hard, and so for him, it was like, let's take this gamble, take the risk. I heard in my head when his engineer came on, it was like, we're waiting for a safety car. I'm like, oh my God. It's Christian Horner. All we need is a miracle. And then there was a freaking crash in 2021.
Yeah.
Every time we're in Abu Dhabi, I have PTSD. Even watching the race, I have PTSD because I've seen it so many times, the 2021 incident, where they're coming down and just flashbacks. It's like guns going off in my head.
Anyways, it wasn't that race this time.
It wasn't. No, we didn't have anything. Like we said, we didn't have any craziness, But
so then what happens is that the strategies, like with I don't know, 10 laps, something like that was left in there. And you started hearing drivers on the radio like, where's Lewis? Where's Carlos? What's the position like? What is going on? Give me the distance between these guys. Should I back off? Should I block?
This is where Charles turned from not only driver to race engineer and strategist. Okay, so we at Ferrari like the drivers to do everything. We've seen Carlos do it in Singapore.
Well, because they always have a question.
Yeah, and they sign off on their own decisions. So essentially, Charles knows the position he's in. He could have easily, I think, secured P2. And, obviously knowing that there was a 5-second penalty, he was like, okay, well, what's the gap? At this point, it was like 1.5 seconds because it was less than 10 laps.
It was, yeah.
And, we're closing in on the end.
Yeah,
but
it was like 5 or
they
something.
were inquiring, earlier, like, okay, what's going on? But he's like, okay, if it's less than 5 seconds, I'll back him up, give him a slipstream, give him the DRS, let him pass because he knows essentially, hey, I'm going to still secure P2. And he doesn't really give a shit about the race. Like, he was like, I don't care about the race.
I care
what
all
matters
about
is the constructors.
Well, it's like, what, 10 million I think we talked about? That's
10 million is the difference between P2 and P3.
It's a lot of money when you're talking a salary cap of 135 or something, 25, something like that, million. So that's a good chunk.
Yeah.
I think he was totally trying to be the strategist.
He was.
He was being played out on radio in front of everybody. However, it didn't really work.
I think because Charles is like a good,
because he would have had to let him by, and then he would have had to started doing some like sneaky blocking, kind of what
Alonso
and or what Sergio did back
in
21 that helped Max get that win. One of the
I think Sergio in 21, he actually was racing. He ended up blowing up his engine that race, if you don't remember.
Well, that too, but there was also moments in those braking zones when he comes underneath that hotel.
Yeah.
Where,
that's dangerous driving.
The slowest you possibly could go in racing modes, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think there could have been all of that, and there wasn't, Yeah,
so. I think so. I think Toto did say after, and George said too, they were like, listen, he could have done some sneaky stuff where he, just basically completely backed off and blocked us.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, I was like, it wouldn't have been enough points anyways. But it would have been enough points that they would have tied.
And then they would have got
And they would have won because they had the one non-Red Bull race win this year, which is crazy. And we saw that in the driver's standings for position 4.
Yeah.
Alonso and Charles ended up tying. Alonso had more P3 finishes than Charles did. And so Alonso is technically P4.
That's right.
It was kind of a crazy end to the season. Like, there was a lot down to the wire.
There was. We also saw with the couple of the finishes, because I can say this, Alex Albon with Williams just... The whole thing on his back.
He took Williams and just slung him over.
They were in 9th or 10th position leading up into this, and then they finished in 7th.
I'm not leading into this race, no.
No, but that's where they were kind of last year. They came out. They were in one of the bottom teams.
They were one of the bottom teams last year. They had a great start. AlphaTauri had a terrible start. AlphaTauri since Singapore has been putting in some upgrades. They ended up, I think, only 3 or 4 points behind them and the actual constructors. Yep. And so that was an impressive comeback from AlphaTauri. Good momentum going into next season. But Williams, Alex Albon, he did carry Williams on his back.
He did. Hands down to him. Great driver. I think we can get him a right team.
Rumor mills are swirling about him when his contract's up that he's going to Ferrari.
Oh, man, imagine him in a good car, because he is fast.
He was in a good
He
car.
He also was under a lot of pressure coming from Red Bull. Sorry for our lights. If you see the flicker, there it is right there. It's
storming. It's snowing.
It's an electrical issue, apparently. We'll get it worked out in a little bit. But anyways, I think that he deserves a lot of credit for that, because essentially – Logan Sargent got him 1 point, and his team that was it. It was just 1 point.
Logan got the 1 point in the U.S. because of the disqualifications of Lewis and Charles.
Yeah.
Everything else came from Alex Albon. Impressive.
Yep.
He also was the only driver to out-qualify his teammate every single weekend, 22-0.
Yep.
Last time it was done was 2020, and it was Max versus Albon. So a little bit of redemption there.
Yeah. And that's, again, maybe it's probably to be expected that year, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Wild. So the season is over. There is 90-something days until...
97 days.
I know, but by the time people get to watch this, it's less than that.
Yeah. It's like 3 months, guys. It'll go by quick. I think everyone is sad to see Formula One go. And, I think we need to think that we're blessed that it happens for as long as it does. It's almost a year-round sport. And we also need to think, these drivers, not to mention, a lot of them were sick this weekend. Ocon was really sick. George was really sick. George commented on how, a lot of engineers and mechanics were sick.
Yeah. They're all tired because we only see the face, which is the drivers and the principals.
And they have it easy, is what George said. Our travel accommodations are a lot easier than the teams.
Yeah.
And, the seasons are getting longer and longer. There's more that goes into it, obviously, with sprint weekends. And so they well-deserved rest. I know what I feel like when I need a vacation. I can only imagine what they feel like. So.
Oh, yeah. So well-deserved for the teams. Hats off to you guys. Great season for the midfield.
Great season for the midfield. But, as much as we hate to see Max win every weekend, hats off to Max.
Yeah.
3-time world champion.
Unbelievable.
First time Red Bull was, 1-2 in the Drivers' Championship. And a lot of broken records. Not sure if we'll see another season like this for a long time. Now, I will say one fact is that whoever, like you said earlier, whoever's on pole in Abu Dhabi
tends to win.
Tends to win. And whoever wins in Abu Dhabi the season before
tends to win
the championship
Yeah.
the next year.
Cool.
Also, champions that have won 3 always go on to win a 4th. So I guess Max is winning next year, guys. So tune in.
Yeah. Okay, so since we're kind of ending this year, this may or may not be the last podcast. I want to.
I gotta do more to analyze. There's so much
I know.
more.
Quickly on the spot, what was your favorite moment of the year? I guess.
My favorite moment of the year. Oh my God. Going to the races. I'm like, other than, we obviously experienced 2 much different races, but Montreal in the rain, our first rain, live in person. Austin was a good time as always. I mean, I don't know. I really enjoyed Singapore for the racing and good to see a nice mix. I enjoyed Zandvoort. I think that was my favorite race if I had to think back to it, just because it was a good mix. We had the rain, we had the dry, we had all the overtakes, and it bunched the field.
Yeah.
What was your favorite moment?
Honestly, surprisingly, how good the race at Vegas was.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Being able to go to a couple races, being blessed like that's great. I would say I always think it's the best when it's the beginning of the year. I like testing. That's when I'm the most excited. So I would say that is what I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah.
I'm
really looking forward to next year. I think there's a lot of, hype around going into the new season always. So we'll see. And in reality, when we think about Formula One's going to be gone for such a long amount of time or whatever, we've got the livery reveals that start at the beginning of February.
Right, and then they got testing. That's also in February, and then the last weekend of February going into March is an actual first weekend of racing.
Yeah, the new season of Drive to Survive will be coming out around the same time. So, there's a lot, and I think I'll save my favorite moments for I guess the season recap episode we'll do.
Okay.
Because I really need to think about and analyze it because you're putting me on the spot and I'm not prepared.
Yeah.
But I know there's some really good and funny moments that happened, throughout the year that I want to talk about. But if I was put on the spot, my favorite race definitely, I would say, is Zandvoort, then Vegas. Just because the sheer racing was the best.
Yeah, you're right. Zandvoort was really good. I think that was probably that was the best race, and then Vegas, second best race, I guess, of the year. So yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're right. So I don't know. I don't have much more to say other than they deserve a vacation.
They deserve a vacation. Yes.
We'll save our rest of our stuff for a later podcast. We've already talked to you guys for about 40 minutes or so. I appreciate you doing this with me this year. It was a fun season.
It was.
We've
got to get our race plans together for next year, where we're going to go, who we're going to see.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious on what you guys thought of the race and of the season. We saw that today's favorite driver was down to Yuki Tsunoda because of winning laps. Leading laps, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, just for Yuki, at the end of the day, he was race leader, great qualifying, held off Lewis at the end there.
Yeah.
And honestly, he's done a good job the last few races, and I think, he's continuing to get more mature and better. I would say another favorite moment of this weekend was we watched Yuki before Vegas talk about, his favorite actor, and it was Jason Statham. And he got to meet him, and it was such a heartwarming experience. A lot of celebrities, obviously, this weekend in the paddock. Really cool to see him, get to meet him, and I thought that was a great moment.
You're right. That was a good moment. That was cool. That was cool to see.
Yeah, I would say, hats off, driver of the day. If I had to give it to another driver that wasn't him, I would give it to Charles.
Yeah, playing the strategy game, having a good weekend overall. Yeah.
And I'm I think from a consistency standpoint, he's just continued to do a great job over the last 5 races.
Yeah, you're right. So I can't wait to see what happens next year. There is, 24 races. They haven't announced all of the sprint races yet. There has been some secret notions of some being certain ones. There's been talk of still Saturday races. We know Vegas for sure will be a Saturday race. We don't know a time yet, though.
There's a few, and then obviously there was a lot we didn't get into, but just from the final drivers and, like FIA meeting this weekend, a lot of things to come about. Obviously the sprint race weekend calendar, what it looks like, how it's formatted. They're still in discussion. Will it be potential reverse grid? So we're going to see some cool changes next year to shake some things up. And we're going back to China, and I've never seen a race in China myself.
That's right, you haven't. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to be exciting.
It's rumored to be one of the sprint races, so hopefully it's a good track.
Yeah, it is a good track. It's very cool. You'll enjoy it. I've played it on the simulator a few times. It's very fun. Well, I guess that kind of sums up this weekend's podcast from us.
Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi's in the bag. 2023's in the bag. It's gone. It's the holiday season here in America. I'm sure it's the holiday season over there as well where you guys are watching. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you guys for liking, commenting, whatever it is. It's been fun watching Formula One with you, Eileen. Thank you.
Of course.
She teaches me stuff now. She's smart. She knows all of her shit.
I try.
Yeah, we'll see you guys real soon. That's it.
Bye.
Bye.